didn't I? Well, welcome back, boys and girls. We've got our little friends situated over here. We're back with another episode of Six Savage Life for y'all, the loyal fans. This one is going to be about inner demons. We all have them. Some of us, some of us are, just a shadow deep in our closet that put those instincts as far deep down away as possible. Some of us figure out healthy ways to integrate it into our lives so that we don't end up becoming homicidal maniacs and doing something good with that balance of good and evil that we all have, whether we like to think it or not. Me personally, I certainly do have inner demons, but I think I do kind of twist them healthily into my life, as best as I can. But that I will honestly, that wasn't always the case. When I was younger, I had a lot of time, a very hard time, kind of pushing through some of that stuff, and trauma adds to a lot of it. I don't necessarily say that makes somebody a better or worse person, or that it makes them more, but because sometimes people, the kind of people who have gone through a lot of adversity in life, have seen a lot of dark things, end up doing great things in life because they're pushed to really become the best of people that they will be. For me, substance abuse has tied into it a lot. I can tell you this stuff right here is certain to bring out the beasts in me. Alcohol, and the same token has been also the medicine for numbing trauma. I guess for me, when the first time things really started to get dark was, as a young man, probably, when I started doing cocaine in high school, it was already, things were going downhill. But things didn't really get dark until, probably after my first serious breakup. I had lots of girlfriends in high school, but, most of those relationships didn't last longer than a month. One or two of the early ones when I was in like 7th or 8th grade, I never even met the chick in real life before. Those just AIM relationships that were so popular in the early 2000s. As an adult, I look at things in kind of terms of the 3 long-term relationships that I had. And this first one was really only about a year and a half long. But I fell into a dark depression afterwards, and I think just all of it all together, my life dealing with everything at that point had been pretty hectic. And let me think. So that, there's that whole rabbit hole, I guess. That's probably where a lot of it really kind of, a lot of like the loneliness and anger, really started to sunk in. After, that relationship, I was very happy when it started. I always had kind of a relationship with the dark arts, I guess, as you would say, being in a like thrash metal band in high school. We would draw upside down crosses and pentagrams and everything. I don't know if we really knew all that much about what it meant. We did some basic research into it. I guess it was when I really started to feel like kind of the presence of dark spirit in my life. I guess there was the point, where in that one video that I talked, maybe I think it was the last week with the ghosts, this vision of this cat demon type thing. It just started this kind of that. When I started doing heroin, I could see this illuminated like darkness ahead of me. But I don't know if I fully understood it at the time. I didn't realize the loneliness it would bring. At first, it was kind of glamorous, and at the beginning of this relationship, when I had kind of already been kicked out of my parents' house, shit wasn't looking so good. All of a sudden, I get upgraded to the it's I was living in the Icelandic embassy. I won't get too much into like those people necessarily, but it was a girl who was associated with the Icelandic Embassy of America. So I got to live in the embassy there from off of the street. But I think it kind of put things in the wrong proportion for me. I thought things were going well with me. I was selling drugs. And I had been kind of playing the scene, I guess, as a young adult, now that I wasn't in college anymore, looking for girls to hang out with. But it was my addiction had already started pretty heavily, so it's still like it was energy consuming to go out and meet girls. So I went to a party this one day with my friend who was in the grade below me at my school, and I met, or I talked to this girl who I went to high school with, this Icelandic girl, but we didn't really talk in high school. She was in the grade below me, but we really hit it off that night, and I already was kind of like. I don't know. I had a feeling, that I had a good feeling after that initial party, and then we went on a date, a Valentine's Day date. I think like about a week later or so. That was when we kind of really hit it off, and then we ended up dating for the next year and a half or so. But at that point, I think it really it allowed me. Subconsciously, I don't even know if I'm saying this may have been a subconscious process. I don't know if I really knew I was doing this, but I think in my mind I was kind of setting myself up for a situation as an adult that I think I would be set with. Like I knew that I had talked to some of my drug dealer friends who were saying like how much easier things were with a girlfriend, especially as a young adult, kind of learning to juggle all of these new responsibilities you have. If you have like a partner to help you with, it makes it a lot easier. But also, I just felt like I didn't have to put on as much of a show to impress girls. But ultimately, like, it was bad, because quickly I learned to just accept that this addiction I had was okay, and that, I didn't need to make as much of this impression on people, and I could let down my guard a little bit. But things fell apart pretty quickly. Our relationship was very turbulent over that next year and a half. And she was a very sweet girl. I felt awful. It's not like I was abusive or anything, but it's just like, I was a person falling apart. I could hardly take care of myself. So, like we were very different, and she was on a bright path, definitely. And I think now she's eventually, probably, I think because of me, because that was when she moved back. She decided to move back to Iceland, but she has a kid there and a family, and they're doing great. As far as I know, we keep in touch every once in a while, but I haven't talked to her at length in a long time. But so basically towards our end of our relationship, things were just getting worse. Eventually I'd gotten off of heroin, but I was in the methadone program, and there was a lot of trauma that came from that. And that's like I've said, how like withdrawals have been such a traumatic experience for me. That was one of those first times when I lived in New York, where I had saved all this money from selling pot. Before moving, I moved to New York with this girl initially, because she, I guess, things were complicated with her family and the embassy, so they ended up really having to leave America. They had to leave America, but she, wanted to stay, so she went to college in New York. And like I was, I knew that like if she left and I was stuck here, like my life would fall apart. So this is what the kind of around, I'd been hadn't spoke to my parents more than like 2 or 3 times in like a year at least. But I pleaded with them to like help me move to New York, and they had made me agree that I would do this program and then I would go to New York. So I did this 3-month program. Unfortunately, I didn't really have any intentions of keeping long-term sobriety, and I sold pot still throughout it. But this time, now I'm realizing I can just save this money. So I save all this money. We move to New York. Things get bad really quickly. My habit picks up from the second I pulled out of that parking lot after the first program. I took a handful of Percocets. So pretty quickly, all the money I had diminished, and I'm like, the last of the dope that I could get was so horrible that it would like just be this. You'd cook it up and it turned into this purple goop. I probably very little of it was real at all, but like I was like deathly sick. Most of my friends had moved to New York too from high school. So I had friends around, but my life was so much different than theirs. They were all enjoying their lives. I was falling apart, emotionally and physically, and my family's not really talking to me. My friends aren't. My girlfriend. So I'm in this huge new concrete jungle, and I feel so alone. Like nobody understands what I'm going through, and I'm like feeling things magnified times 1,000, and like just too weak to even face the day. But I had to go out and figure out the situation for myself, because after, eventually I had to just go to the hospital because I had no other options. They gave me like a night's worth of methadone. Basically said like, you're gonna have to figure this out. You're probably gonna have to go into a methadone clinic. And my parents, fortunately, I talked to them. They would help me out with that. Not with finding it, but with paying for it. It ended up only being about like $100 a month at that time. So I'm in this methadone program in New York. First, I had to seek it out myself. There were a couple days where I'm sick and just pacing the street. A couple of the clinics turned me down because I was too young. But finally, I got hooked up, and then the relationship got really bad from there. I was starting to feel better, but I would go to bed every night at 8 o'clock. I couldn't really do anything fun anymore, and I think it just wasn't really what she was hoping for. I think I had seemed at the beginning with all this money and rock and roll, it would have been this big thing, but it had gotten ugly. But anyways, so when I had gotten back, I lived in New York for a while after she had left, and eventually I fell out. I just wasn't doing well in school. During one trip back to visit my parents in D.C., my drinking had picked up really heavily. That's the way I was dealing with the depression. I'd gotten a DUI, even though that night I had only had 1 or 2 glasses of wine, but I had taken a bunch of Xanax. I guess I was just really horribly parallel parked. But so I was I put on probation. I ended up not being able to smoke weed for the next year. That made things really a lot tougher. So that's when I started drinking so heavily that by the time I get home from my methadone clinic, I would be just blacked out. And that was my hope for life. I pretty much had lost hope to live, and I'm just hoping I could black out through as much of the time as I could. I'd started attempted for art school for the 3rd time at Montgomery College, but it was just, and I'd always grown up atheist, so I never really felt like I saw things through this scope of Christianity, but I just had all this hate and anger in me that I didn't know what to direct it towards. And that's when I think kind of felt like the start of this this dispute with God. That is when I'd start taping upside down crosses all over my room and making these God voodoo dolls, just stabbing it. I'd watch all these ghosts. That's when I started my real, I think, interest in paranormal started to increase. But I have 5 seconds left, so I'll be part 2 soon. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.